Hello class, this is our review for our very first unit, the introduction that we did last week. If you haven't done the assignments yet, please make sure you go back and listen to the presentations, look at the PowerPoints, and get the assignments completed as soon as possible. If you have questions, please text me or email me or arrange to have a Google Meet on Wednesday. So the very first thing we did last week was talk about the definition of art and the definition of craft. So you should be able to know the definition of art. It is the communication through your senses, your five senses being taste, touch, hearing, sight, and smell. Art's primary purpose is to communicate and to be aesthetic. The definition of craft is art that is made for a purpose, and the primary purpose of craft is to be able to function as well as its physical properties. Any aesthetic properties are bonus, and to be able to identify objects as art or crafts. In the two images below, the one on the right you should be able to identify as art. It is a collage portrait, and on the left is one you should be able to identify as crafts. Those are a pair of beaded baby shoes that are made by a former student. Technical qualities was the next thing we talked about. Medium is your materials. Media is your action, what you're doing, you're baking, you're dancing, you're singing, you're painting, you're sculpting. Technique is how you do it, process is your step-by-step directions, and craftsmanship is how well you do something. So consider this question and the two examples on the right. Joe is baking a rainbow cake for his daughter's birthday. What is his media? What is his medium? And which of these two cakes have better craftsmanship? His media would be baking. His medium would be all the things that you need to make a cake, the ingredients and the tools, and I believe the one on top has better craftsmanship. Part 3 was content and context. We talked about this on Thursday. Content is the meaning. So our content for our class is human development. And what does human development have to do with crafts? I talked about this several times, and we will talk about it again today. It is that crafts are often made because of a stage of human development is used to mark that stage, or with rituals and traditions associated with that stage. What is context? That's a specific background kind of information, the things that you need to know, who, what, where, when, why, and how, in order to really understand a craft. And what do specific cultural groups have to do with crafts? Specific cultural groups have different traditions, rituals, and crafts that they make to mark certain occasions. For example, over here on the right are two cakes. The top cake is a wedding cake, a very traditional type of wedding cake. It's white, it has tiers, it's round, and it has flowers. On the bottom is something called a groom's cake. This is not traditional all over the country. It's found in certain parts, and it's to kind of recognize that the groom is part of the wedding as well. Groom's cakes at their very basic tend to be a chocolate cake, often with chocolate-covered strawberries on them. But a lot of times, too, they reflect something that the groom is really interested in. For example, here the cake is designed as a grill, and it's got barbecue sauce and corn on the cobs and some ribs. And it shows that he is also part of that celebration. If you go to the grocery store, you can find this also in ice cream form by Bluebell. You have the bride's cake, which is almond ice cream with amaretto flavored cream cheese icing, almond cake, and that's because a lot of wedding cakes do have an almond flavor to them. The groom's cake is the chocolate ice cream with chocolate cake pieces, chocolate covered strawberry hearts, strawberry sauce, and chocolate ice cream. Everybody's important. All right, the last thing that we talked about was relevance. Relevance is how things connect to you and how certain traditions and crafts come into our culture. What it means when a craft is originated in a culture is that the culture has developed it themselves. If you're talking about the holidays on the right, the example would be Uncle Sam and the 4th of July, because that is a uniquely American holiday. Appropriation means that things, traditions, are kind of adopted and used, but we don't really understand what they mean or where they came from. We just kind of do it. And our example for appropriation, holiday-wise, is Easter and the rabbit and the egg being linked up with this very serious kind of religious holiday. Assimilation means something that is gradually incorporated into a culture, and it changes over time, but it keeps its original meaning and form. And our example was Santa Claus, and we talked about how Nicholas and Myra became a bishop. He was from Turkey in the Middle East, and that turned into kind of a chubby white guy that's old and brings you toys and has magic flying reindeer. Yeah. Fusion is when two things are kind of just smack together at the same time. They could be put together because they have something in common, such as a date. For example, you see over there the Day of the Dead and Halloween. They are two separate holidays. They're not the same thing. They don't have the same meaning, but they're right next to each other. Halloween is October 31st. The Days of the Dead are November 1st and 2nd. And they both have to deal with the afterlife, but in very different kind of ways. Another example of fusion that we talked about in class was taco pizza. Culture is the group of people with similarities and similar beliefs and traditions. And you need to be able to list at least 5 cultural subgroups with examples. We talked about geographic subcultures. We talked about age-based subcultures, generational cultures, temporal cultures around significant events, occupational, your job, vocational, a trained skill, social groups, all those things. Okay? So that is your review. If you would please take the quiz and test your knowledge. Remember, as always, you can retake quizzes until you have a perfect grade. That's up to you. All right? That's it.